Let's talk about what's happening in Texas, because they are currently on the verge of passing a law that would force the Ten Commandments into every classroom in the state. They want to put the King James version of the Ten Commandments in every classroom. And this is the bill that they are about to pass. You can see the highlight at the top left. This is Senate Bill 10. Get it? Get it? Senate Bill 10 for the Ten Commandments. And you can see this at the bottom on the far left. You see the letter H. That means it made its way through the state house. It passed. It made its way through the state Senate. That passed. There was a little change made. It went back to the House. Basically, we are one governor's signature away from this thing becoming a law. And what does this bill actually say? You could see it right here. I'll jump to the relevant sections here, but look at the top. A public elementary or secondary school shall, like they have to, display in a conspicuous place in each classroom of the school a durable poster or framed copy of the Ten Commandments. And it has to do all the following. Number one here, it has to include only the text of the Ten Commandments, no slogans, nothing else at the bottom. It has to be a size and font and typeface that is legible to a person with average vision. So no doing this in like size 6 font if you're trying to be sneaky. The poster has to be 16 inches wide and 20 inches tall. And then it has to read as follows. And they give you exactly what it has to say, which is weird because different Christians have different translations of the commandments. They don't all believe it written this way in this order, but this is the KJV version of it. And after all that, it says, if you don't include a poster or framed copy, guess what? Look at line 16. You have to accept any offer of a privately donated poster or framed copy as long as it meets all the requirements and doesn't include any other weird stuff. And what else does it say? If you don't have a poster, you can also buy one, look at line 27, using district funds. So this is where your taxpayer money is going. Schools can buy posters of the Ten Commandments using taxpayer dollars meant to educate children. There's also one amendment here. Look at that was added. This is line 3. If you get sued over this, the Attorney General shall defend any school that basically gets sued for following this law. And if you lose, look at line 7, the state is liable for the expenses, costs, judgments, settlements arising out of the representation. So they are using the Attorney General to defend any lawsuits about this. And if the state of Texas or if a school district loses that lawsuit, Texas taxpayers are on the hook, not anyone else. Right? So that's what this law does. This is what Texas is about to pass. It's a dumb idea, right? Like it's a horrible idea. The reason I want to bring this up is not just to say this is happening. Abbott's going to sign this bill probably this weekend or something. But also I wanted to show you how one Democrat in the Texas legislature did everything he could to try to highlight why this bill is dumb. And I'm going to get to that in a second. Just a couple things about this. They tried to pass this bill like 2 years ago, and it passed the state Senate. It did not make it to a final vote in the state House. Now, I don't remember why it didn't get to a final vote in the state House. Maybe it's because they had other priorities. They really wanted to like hurt trans kids or something that year. I don't remember. But it didn't get to a vote, even if it would have passed. This time around, the Republicans just passed it without really much thought. There was a letter that was sent to lawmakers right here. It was sent March 18th. And it was a letter signed by like 150 Christian and Jewish leaders telling them, look at that last line in paragraph 1 right above me. We believe this legislation is a misguided effort that undermines the faith and freedom we cherish. And they make their case as to why you don't put the Ten Commandments. But just look at this. How many people signed this letter? Look at how many pages this goes on for. All those Texas lawmakers just ignored all of this because, again, none of these people are real Christians, right? They're all fake ones, pretending. Some of them are women. So, of course, they're not interested in listening to this. Now, as I know some of you know, Louisiana has already passed a law requiring classrooms to post the 10 Commandments. They got sued over it, and a judge said, yeah, this is totally unconstitutional, and he struck down that law. The state has appealed. We're still waiting for the results of that appeal. A couple weeks ago, Arkansas passed its own version of this bill. No lawsuits have been filed yet, maybe because school is no longer in session, and maybe they'll get around to it soon, but Arkansas passed this bill too. Texas, however, would be the largest and most influential state to get this one on the books. I'll move on in a second, but just to rehash, why is it wrong to put the 10 Commandments in a classroom wall? Just to rehash some common arguments. It's weird that the same people who do not want high schoolers learning about sex, systemic racism, the existence of LGBTQ people, they have very specific things they want kindergartners to know about adultery and their neighbors' maidservants. And if you're a kid and you're wondering, hey, teacher, what is adultery? Good luck to you, because sex education is not required in Texas. Also, the list doesn't solve anything. It doesn't solve any problems. If you're worried about like school shootings, notice Texas lawmakers, Texas Republicans are not trying to do any sort of gun safety measures. They don't care about that. No school shooter has ever thought about doing something horrible and then thought, oh, wait, God said thou shalt not kill. Let me turn around and get out of this school in Uvalde. Never happened. The idea that someone's going to see thou shalt not kill and then that'll trigger something is some fantasy that doesn't make any sense. And if you need a sign to tell you not to hurt other people, you've got bigger issues. It would be great if those students could see a mental health professional, but guess what in Texas? In Texas, they want those mental health professionals replaced by Christian chaplains. So that's no good. And obviously, a whole bunch of the commandments have nothing to do with morality or ethics. They're just about promoting religion because they're rules against believing in false gods and not making graven images, like, say, a 10 Commandments poster that you got to worship in class. And you can't take God's name in vain, and you got to keep the Sabbath day holy. Those don't have anything to do with anything. So what the hell? George Carlin has done the famous bit about why the commandments could be whittled down to 2, right? So the thing I wanted to show you, though, there is a Democratic lawmaker. His name is James Tallarico. He is a Democrat. He's a former middle school teacher. He also sits on the House Public Education Committee. And this bill came up in his committee about a month ago. And he got to ask questions of the sponsor of the bill, a Republican representative named Candy Noble. And he did this 2 years ago as well. I'm not going to play everything from 2 years ago. You can look that up online. It's glorious. But he had 25 minutes of back and forth with this Republican. I'm going to play you a video that tries to whittle it down to about 3 to 4 minutes. So it's a lot of splicing here. I'm not taking it out of context, but I want to show you a bunch of their exchanges. All of this, by the way, took place at 4 a.m. That's when they scheduled this hearing, when the fewest people could be around to listen to it. So again, this is a series of things between James Tallarico and the bill's sponsor, Candy Noble.
Is there a separation of church and state in this country?
That's an interesting question that has been debated a great deal, but
do you think the Constitution is foundational to our country?
I do. I believe all of those are foundational to our, and I've loved visiting them in the archives in Washington, D.C.
I guess what I'm trying to figure out, if that's the most foundational document, why doesn't your bill mandate that the Constitution be posted in every classroom?
If you want to carry that bill, you can. I'm carrying the bill that I chose to carry.
Yeah, and I'm not interested in micromanaging what posters are put up in classrooms, which is why I would never carry a bill like this. But I'm asking why, since you are in the business of deciding what posters are up in a classroom, which ones aren't, why is the Constitution not taking that prime spot because it's the most foundational document?
I'm so tired. I'm just.
That's okay. I know.
Brain fog,
let me move on. Let me move on.
I'll move on. Trying to.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah.
How do you think it makes a Hindu student feel to have a poster in every classroom that says, thou shalt not worship any God before me.
I don't know. I haven't asked one. Have you?
I
just
have
haven't.
actually,
But again, they're here and they're Americans. I assume they're Americans now, and I think that they would find it interesting to see what was important and foundational to our forefathers that made this nation a place that they wanted to come and live and raise a family and be part of it. And I really think that you're taking offense that someone wouldn't take from a historical perspective.
Well, again, we established that our founding fathers wanted a separation of church and state. But,
I did not establish that. I absolutely did not establish
historical
that.
fact established
I
that.
disagree with that. I do want to point out one thing to you, though, that I just learned about. Did you know that we have faith-based prisons that prisoners can choose here in Texas? And did you know that the recidivism rate in a regular prison is 68%, but the recidivism rate in a faith-based prison is 8%?
So based on that analogy, this is a faith-based proposal for schools.
No, not at all. I just wanted to explain.
I think Representative Noble, the same thing we saw with Representative Bryant's questioning, is that there's a switching back and forth of saying this is historical,
Yeah.
and then but then through your comments, the religion comes through, right? When you're talking, I do want to close out what I was saying, which is that I hear from young people, Gen Z, my fellow millennials, all the time who really do long for genuine faith communities, but they see modern religion as performative. They see religious leaders who are all about power, all about being better than others. And my worry is that by leveraging our power as legislators to elevate one religion over the rest, especially in front of our children, that's the kind of stuff that gives religion a bad name. And in this country, it's what gives Christianity a bad name. But I think for those whose goal is, with this bill, to create a new generation of Christians, I think it will actually have the opposite effect. And I worry that these kinds of bills will actually create a new generation of atheists who think our religion is more about power than love. And that's my primary concern with this bill.
I mean, not bad for a Christian politician in the dead of night who is defending church-state separation against a colleague who, along with her entire Republican Party, firmly denies the historical record. Just to recap some of the stuff she pointed out there, he asked if there was separation of church and state in this country, and she's like, that's an interesting question. Like, no, it's not up for debate. It's the First Amendment. He asked if the Constitution was foundational to the country, and how come you don't want that one up in the classrooms? And she's like, but that's not what my bill is about. You can do that. And he's like, I don't want to micromanage classrooms like you do. What the hell? He asked her, why is the Constitution, if that's so important, not something you want in classrooms? And then she just paused for a long time before saying she's tired. She's in a brain fog. That has nothing to do with it being 4 a.m. That's just her brain not working. The racist part, oh my God, he said, how would this make a Hindu student feel? She's like, I don't know, I don't talk to brown people. And then he says, well, I've talked to them. And she said, and I'm quoting here, well, they're here and they're American. I assume they're Americans now. What the hell? Because she's talking about people like me. And this idea that, like, well, those tribal people, they don't understand American values. Like we all get to shoot each other in America or something like that. She also mentioned faith-based prisons, and she basically said there are faith-based prisons in Texas where when you leave those prisons, the recidivism rate, you're not going to come back to jail because you're a good person now. You don't break the law, and it's higher. The recidivism rate is lower from those faith-based prisons than they are in secular prisons. So maybe religion is good. And Tallarico made the point, like, so you're saying religion is good. Is that why you want the 10 Commandments in the classroom? Because you're trying to foist your religion on kids? And she's like, no. Interesting thing about that, I was trying to figure out what the hell she is talking about. And someone sent me this. I don't know if this is specifically what she's referring to, but there is or was a program in Texas. But look at this paragraph here. As of 2004, the only group the only offenders that can participate in this program, this Christian program, are people who are already expected to be released. They have to volunteer from the program. They must be classified at the minimum security custody level. They have to speak English, be within 3 years of release, have a good behavior records, no sex offenders allowed. All of that's fine. Let's assume for a second this program is legal, because I don't know anything else about it. What that is telling you is the only people allowed to participate in this faith-based program are prisoners who have a really good track record and like haven't done anything bad, relatively speaking. And we assume they're going to be good. And this program helps them, I don't know, reacclimate to society or something. Yeah, of course, the recidivism rate is going to be relatively low compared to the general prison population. That's not because Christianity is good. It's because you're only picking people who already meet a certain set of expectations. So she's just misusing statistics there, is my point. And then at the very end, Tallarico pointed out that, when as legislators, if we're elevating one religion over the other, over all the others, especially in front of children, it gives our religion a bad name. And he doesn't like that because he's Christian. And he said, if you pass this and people see the 10 Commandments in school, it'll have the opposite effect. They're going to turn atheist because they won't like our religion, which I don't see the problem with that. But I get why he would be disturbed by that. But anyway, good for him. He was polite. He was respectful, but he was firm. And he did have a point of view. He didn't go there with an axe to grind. He just wanted to point out how bad this bill was in doing exactly what the lawmakers who supported it wanted it to do. And he highlighted all the ways this was promoting religion over non-religion and Christianity over non-Christianity and conservative Christianity over more progressive forms of Christianity. And no matter how much Noble insisted this had nothing to do with religion, her comments said otherwise. By the way, hate group leader Tony Perkins of the Family Research Council, he interviewed the Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick this week and asked him about this bill. You know what Dan Patrick said? In every classroom in Texas, they are going to see the 10 Commandments and they are going to know God. Like, these people are saying the quiet part out loud. This is all about shoving Christianity, their brand of Christianity, down students' throats. They're not going to learn anything about the founding fathers or America's legal history because no one gives a shit about that. They're going to learn about conservative Christianity, right? And they're not even going to do that because you don't learn about Christianity by staring at the 10 Commandments. Anyway, back to Tallarico. Last Saturday, this bill, it's out of committee now. They were going to debate it in the state house. And just before it came up for a vote in the state house, Candy Noble was back on the floor basically saying, hey, everybody, vote for my bill. And guess who was in line to ask her questions at that point? It was James Tallarico once again. And the very first question he wanted to ask her stumped her. Let me play that for you. This is just glorious.
What is the fourth commandment?
Are you referring to my to the way it's written in the bill?
Yes.
Okay, right. Keep the Sabbath. It's about us being here on Saturday. Is that ironic or what?
So what does it mean to keep the Sabbath holy?
Well, I think it's, you want to get into theology here? I'd love to, if you'd like to. I think it's really important that we take a day of rest. I think God, who founded the world, didn't need rest, and yet he took a day of rest after he did creation, and I think he was a good example to us to take a day of rest. And that is enshrined in our rules, in our Constitution, where it says accepting Sunday in our very early documents as a nation.
And so part of keeping the Sabbath holy is not working on the Sabbath?
That is, yeah.
And what is
a day of rest.
The 10 Commandments come from Judaism. What day is the Jewish Sabbath?
It is on Saturday.
And what day is it today?
It is Saturday. Here we are.
The Christian Sabbath is what day?
Sunday, in honor of the day that Jesus rose from the dead.
And we're scheduled to give this bill a final vote on what day of the week?
It's ironic, isn't it?
It's not ironic. It's just hypocritical, and she's full of shit. And no, she didn't know what the fourth commandment was. She had to tell little mustache boy behind her, hey, help me out here. He's the one that whispered it in her ear because she didn't know. Again, Republicans do not give a shit about obeying the commandments. They just want to shove Christianity down everyone else's throat. And that point was made. I'm going to show you one more clip. He made that point a second later. And I just want you to keep this in mind. If you followed anything about Texas politics in recent years, like the Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton, is maybe the most hated dude in the state. Even a lot of Republicans hate the guy. He's done so many crooked things. Republicans tried to impeach him, but they didn't have quite every Republican on board. And as the saying goes, if you come for the king, you best not miss. They missed. And so Ken Paxton's still in power. He's actually considering running for the Senate right now in 2026. And if he does that, it's like, you know what? If you're a Democrat, that's not a horrible idea because people hate that guy more than Ted Cruz. If you run a Democrat who's decent, you have a chance of beating Ken Paxton. But Ken Paxton is a liar. He is corrupt. He is an alleged adulterer. And all of this has come out into the public record. So I want you to see what Tallarico said one more time when he's questioning Candy Noble about all this.
The ninth commandment is thou shalt not bear false witness. Are you aware of any legislators who have lied about anything?
That is, there might be one coming up in a minute if you keep talking. We'll see.
The seventh commandment is thou shalt not commit adultery.
Yes?
Do you think that members of the legislature should focus more on trying to follow the Ten Commandments rather than telling others to follow them?
Maybe they didn't have them posted.
I am, it is incumbent on all of us to follow God's law, and I think that we would be better off if we did.
Again, none of these people actually care. They voted for Donald Trump, a guy who has broken pretty much every commandment all the time. They do not care about the Ten Commandments. I did appreciate what Congressman Jamie Raskin said when he was following this story. These legislators should be forced to vote on each commandment separately, not an omnibus package, and no one should be allowed to vote for a commandment they violated lest they violate the third commandment. Or, they should respect the Establishment Clause and get back to work. I like that idea, though. You can't vote for this bill if you violated the Ten Commandments, because, again, they don't care. I'm not going to play you everything he did, but James Tallarico did all this. He said this and more 2 years ago, highlighting the hypocrisy. I think I made a video about it on this channel, but it's kind of funny to me that he brought up many of the same points 2 years ago to the very same person sponsoring the bill now, and she learned absolutely nothing in the 2 years between then and now. He asked her the same questions, calling out the same hypocrisies, and she still looked like a deer caught in headlights every single time. Anyway, as much as I appreciate everything Tallarico did, and I say that because he is a Christian who is working to protect church-state separation, he could not stop this bill on his own. Republicans and a handful of Democrats voted to pass this thing, and it looks like Greg Abbott will sign it into law. Two quick things about that. One is that today, as I'm making this video, a coalition of church-state separation groups announced that if and when Greg Abbott signs this bill into law, they will file a lawsuit to put a stop to it before the next school year begins. Like, they're going to file the lawsuit, and we'll see what happens after that. And again, I don't know if that's necessarily a good or bad thing, because if you file a federal lawsuit, I don't necessarily want this going to the Supreme Court, where the right-wing justices might say, it's tradition. They'll lie. I mean, it's not tradition, but that might end badly. There's one other thing I wanted to show you, which is there is a way to push back against this bill that involves malicious compliance. Because if this bill passes, with the language I already showed you at the beginning of this segment, it turns out there is an activist named Chaz Stevens who's nothing if not a king of malicious compliance. And this is a website he set up, Bite Me, Greg Abbott, because Chaz Stevens is sending Texas schools 25,000 satirical Ten Commandments. And basically, this is an example of a poster he made that he's willing to sell to anyone who wants to submit it to their local school districts. It is exactly the text that they have in the bill. It is visible if you make a poster big enough. He's just highlighting a handful of words that could be fun for students to see. That's one example of what he could do. There's another example of something he's done as well, which is this poster. Because the bill did not say the 10 Commandments have to be written in English. This one's in Arabic, which again, why would that be a problem? It wouldn't be, but if you're a racist Republican, you might not like this. And the thing is, what did that bill say at the very beginning? At the beginning of this segment, what did that bill say? It said, if your school gets a donation of these bills that meet all the rules, you have to accept it. Now, does that mean they have to put it up in the classrooms? No, they could accept the posters and then maybe print out a different copy that is less controversial. But also, if you're a teacher who's like, I don't like Greg Abbott, I don't like what this bill is doing, but I do have to follow the law. Chaz has a lot of posters he's willing to sell to anyone who wants to send them to their school districts if this passes. And, you got to love it. It's great. They meet all the requirements, and Texas lawmakers are not smart enough to think about how people would manipulate their rules, right? So anyway, that could be fun, but it shouldn't come to that. They shouldn't be passing this in at all, but this is what they do in Texas because they don't care about actually helping people. All right, what questions we got here before I move on to a different story altogether? Oh, the irony of having political leaders that violate all 10 of the commandments, not to name anyone in particular. That's the thing. Republicans will vote for people who break the 10th commandment. And not even like we've all taken the Lord's name in vain. Like the ones who have done actual heinous shit. And they're like, that guy should be our king. Again, hypocrisy is their only political agenda at this point. Drew from Genetically Modified Skeptic did a great video covering how hard he had to work to make public comment on this. I think I saw that video. Drew McCoy, go subscribe to his channel at Genetically Modified Skeptic. But he tried to speak out against this, and it was really hard for him to just get on that list and do it all. It took a lot out of him. They held off on the hearing until most of the atheists who came to speak had to leave. Like I said, that first video of the subcommittee, they had that hearing at 4 a.m. Not a lot of people were around for it. Thanks for sharing that, Joe. Do they know Thomas Jefferson lived and wrote some shit on this topic historically? You know what? I didn't play this for you, but in that first segment with Talarico and Noble, she brought up Thomas Jefferson, and he's like, Thomas Jefferson, you mean the guy who was a deist and did not believe in the miracles of Jesus? That's the guy you want the kids to be like? And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about, because of course she doesn't. Fundy voice. She so has that Christian fundy voice, that condescending, slightly higher pitched than usual. Go Google fundy voice if you don't know what we're talking about. But, when she says about how it's incumbent on all of us to follow God's law, it says what the goal is. They want you to follow their brand of Christianity. And again, if they wanted to put up a sign that said, thou shalt not kill and steal, we would be having a very different conversation. But that's not what they're interested in. They want to put their religious rules up for everybody. Are these stories a mix between local and sometimes national? That's a good question. I usually stick to national stories, but every now and then, if there's a church state issue that is happening locally, but I think touches on themes that I personally find interesting because they tap into something that is also happening at the national level, I like covering those stories as well. I got another one or two of those that are very local, but I think they are part of a larger story. So I don't know. They're all over the place. They're all about religion and politics usually, right? That's why I don't care about what Jordan Peterson said, but I'm very interested in what the Republican Party is doing to legislate their Christianity. That to me is a bigger issue.